Hello and welcome to A Bechdel Dysfunction, a podcast that dissects feminist films directed by men and discusses whether they are helpful or harmful. I'm Clarice.
And I am Harry Anderson. We are two film school underachievers who are heaps good at talking about movies, but not that flash at making them. We want to acknowledge that we are recording this on Wurundjeri land, and we'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We also extend that to any other First Nations people who may be listening.
This week we're talking all about the critically acclaimed horror Silence of the Lambs, featuring Oscar-winning performances from both Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. Crack open a can of Chianti, we're cooking liver.
It's so good. Silence of the Lambs from 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme, based off the novel by Thomas Harris and adapted to screenplay by Ted Talley, starring Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins, Scott Glenn, Brooke Smith, Ted Levine, or Levine, depending on how you want to say it, and Precious the dog. A young FBI cadet must receive help from an incarcerated and manipulative cannibal killer to help catch another serial killer who goes by the name Buffalo Bill. Cara, how you going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
No worries, anytime. Why is this a feminist film?
It is and it isn't.
Interesting. Do go on.
I think we can view it as, you know, through the lens of the character of Clarice Starling, played by impeccably by Jodie Foster.
Who was 22 at the time, I think.
Yeah, like she's just amazing, powerhouse. Like, wasn't her first movie like Taxi Driver?
Yep.
It's just insane.
With Bobby.
But yeah, anyway, so we can view it through the lens of like her sort of journey from a cadet to a full-blown agent and her triumph over, in a way, well, not her triumph over Hannibal Lecter, but her triumph over Buffalo Bill and her kind of meeting of the minds with Lecter and her success in that field. I think that's probably where you get the most. Oh, and also it's pretty heavily goes into like the social role of women, especially in a highly regimented male world like law enforcement. So it touches on all those things, your relationships with male authority figures. Then you have a whole lot of other stuff that kind of murkies the water a little bit. But yeah, mostly I've been saying we're looking at the character of Clarice for that kind of interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm guessing this wasn't the first time you watched it.
No, I can't really remember that. I think I watched it in like year 12 or maybe first year TAFE or something.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah, I watched it pretty late.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those movies that you just kind of know and there's so much hype around it. You kind of feel like you don't even need to watch it.
Yeah.
But it is excellent.
Yeah,
like
it's probably up there with like The Matrix in terms of one of the most parodied films of all time or quoted films of all time.
Yeah, I think I would, go back to my oft reference. I think I first saw it in like in an episode of 20 to 1 with Bert Newton of like greatest horror films or something.
Yeah.
And then it's on The Simpsons. And I was familiar with also, I think I actually saw Red Dragon first. I think I watched Red Dragon like year 9.
Oh shit.
And I'd seen a bit of the TV show. Mm-hmm. So, like aware of it, but I hadn't seen it till quite late. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched this in high school. I reckon I would have been sort of 14 the first time I saw this, which is, to be perfectly honest, the ideal time to be watching this thing because it was still something a little bit about it. I mean, it had aged a bit. It was probably like close to 20 years old at that time. But yeah, it fucking slaps, man. It's so fucking good. Like in terms of entertainment, in terms of how the plot twists and turns and the general intrigue of being in that world, like that is where Hannibal Lecter is omnipresent at all times despite only being on the screen for like 20 minutes. It's fucking cool, man. Such a fucking cool movie. What great insight. Watching it this time was the first time I've seen it in about 10 years, I reckon. Like I hadn't seen it in fucking ages. And yeah, it holds up. The one thing that I reckon I got more around it this time, which I hadn't necessarily noticed, was the use of POV shots and characters looking directly down the barrel and how I guess that's used to sort of enhance the male gaze. That sort of shit had gone right over my head watching it as a teenager, but now that seems to be placed in there very deliberately to make the viewer feel uncomfortable and get in Clarice's shoes.
I think it's also to just put you in that mindset, like you say, male gaze, but also just constantly being watched. Like, I really notice it in the opening when she's doing this training course, and it's supposed to, and so we get introduced to Clarice in the film with her doing this, like
she's kicking ass on like a Tough Mudder course or something. Yeah,
like this FBI training where you got to like run for ages and like climb ropes and climb over fences and do all this kind of shit. And she does it. She's really good at it. But
very
like
interestingly, sorry to cut you off, but it's like, I think it's a great insight into her character because like she's doing it on her own, like in the early hours of the morning. You learn so much about how tenacious and strong-willed she is.
Yeah.
Like you get that straight away without having to hear any fucking dialogue. Like we do understand that later on as she starts to have conversations with people. Oh, she's super intelligent, very good at her job, but there's some sort of raw tenacity about her that we learn in those opening title sequences when she's going through that ropes course. But please go on.
Just that I think I really noticed in that scene the sort of POV kind of way that it's shot as if she's being stalked almost.
Yeah.
Even though she's in like the safety of whatever, like FBI training facility or whatever.
And the music is so eerie and it makes you think that something bad's going to happen.
You have this very pervasive sense of danger lurking.
Yeah.
People, women being watched, stalked, that kind of thing.
And you're on edge for the entire movie as a result of it. It's really full on.
I think that is the thing, is that I have a lot of points to critique, but as a film, I think it's probably like the best one we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
As a horror film, it's so effective. And I love a police drama. Like, I love investigations. So I love that aspect as well. But like, I was watching the other day and I was messaging you. I was like, the last 20 minutes of this are like the scariest thing.
Yeah, it's so full on. It's so intense. Fun fact, the only horror movie ever to win Best Picture.
Yeah.
And is one of 3 films to win Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. The other 2 films are a film called It Happened One Night from 1934, which I have not seen, and 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a classic. So it's fucking up there.
I've actually only seen It Happened One Night. I haven't seen Cuckoo's Nest.
It's great.
They're both, I'm assuming they're both good.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you a fucking thing about It Happened One Night, but
yeah. It's just kind of actually that one's, I mean, this is totally off topic, but that one's a comedy, which is kind of interesting. Comedies don't rate as well anymore. But anyway.
Yeah.
Like hugely critically successful, commercially successful. Also, I love, for some Melbourne trivia, that this movie came out the same year as Spotswood, which also starred Anthony Hopkins, like just walking around the western suburbs of Melbourne.
Yeah.
Which is
previously made famous by Mel Gibson walking around Science Works. People fucking love that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins was there too. So,
well done for the greater Footscray area.
Yeah.
In general. Well, how about we just breeze over the plot quickly? It is a meandering, detailed plot, but give it a crack. I'm throwing you under the bus, the plot bus.
All right. So, Clarice Starling is
correct.
She's a trainee at the FBI. I don't know how FBI shit works. About to graduate, about to join officially.
She's a rookie.
Yeah. So she is tasked with interviewing Hannibal Lecter, who is already incarcerated, serial killer, cannibal,
psychiatrist.
Yeah. The trifecta.
Well-to-do socialite with a taste for human blood.
Yes. By sort of under false pretenses by Jack Crawford, who's leading this other investigation. She's sent in there under the, like, she's just supposed to be getting a profile of Lecter, trying to get him to respond to some of the questions that he hasn't answered the FBI or his treating doctors before. And they're kind of hoping that because she's like a pretty young girl, that he might be able to like play along with that. And then it kind of turns out that it was sort of a ploy to try and get him to give them some information on the active serial killer Buffalo Bill.
Who drives the plot along.
Yeah.
He's the big baddie who we're all trying to get.
Yeah, so he's the one we're trying to catch, who has also, coincidentally, when this is all happening, not coincidentally, he's taken his most recent victim, who is the daughter of a senator. So she's kind of a bit more important, I guess.
The case is blowing up on TV. It's getting national traction now.
So there's a bit more pressure. So they're really trying to get Lecter to help them. I think this is kind of a problem is when you think about it a bit too hard, it does kind of get a bit stupid because Lecter apparently did treat Buffalo Bill's boyfriend 10 years prior and had his head in a storage facility.
It's a big move. Yeah.
Like when you said he was omnipresent, I think there's a kind of, when you think about it too hard, there's a little bit too much of that. There's a little bit too much that he knows for no reason. He's just like, there's this secret serial killer community and they all know each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of absurd. Criminology has advanced and found its way into mainstream media. People's general knowledge of this sort of stuff is a lot broader. So looking back on a movie from 1991, a lot of the stuff in this seems very surface level ridiculous. Like they're very kind of one-to-one bad guys, all these serial killers.
Oh, I don't even mean that. I just mean generally in like a plot. Like you don't notice it as you're watching it, I think, because it kind of slots together pretty smoothly. It's just when I go back and I think about like, hold on, why was that head in that storage facility that Hannibal Lecter rented out? Like, what was the connection there? Yeah. I think it gets a bit convoluted, but that's okay.
But it also just zips along so quickly. Yeah. You're just like, okay, well, we've got this clue. We're going to go on to the next thing. Anyway.
It kind of doesn't matter because it doesn't matter while you're watching it. But anyway, Lecter manages to escape.
Face off.
I mean, let's try and break down how he gets out, right? Because Clarice approaches him with a fake deal of, if you help us find Buffalo Bill, we're going to put you in a better facility
on Plum Island.
And then this is a lie, and Chilton, the manager or whatever of the facility that Lecter's in, finds out about this, and he intervenes and makes up his own deal with the senator, which involves Hannibal Lecter being transported out. And then in part of this transport and holding in a temporary facility, he manages to, kill and remove somebody's face and
in a fucking amazing sequence, it's quietly.
It's so good. That as well. Like that and the ending, it's truly excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so then he's just kind of out of the movie after that. He escapes. Like he's not really relevant after that, but just still leaves the biggest imprint. And then, yes, with some help from some of Lecter's clues, Clarice tracks down, kind of by coincidence as well, Buffalo Bill, locates the victim. They have a showdown.
She kills him. Frees the girl. She saves the day. She graduates from the CIA, FBI, sorry. And then gets a call from Hannibal Lecter, who's on holiday in Barbados or something.
Yeah.
Where he's catching up with an old friend for dinner. He's having an old friend for dinner.
Yes.
Convoluted but fucking sick.
Yeah.
So very good. So many memorable characters. Yeah, man, what a movie. I sense that you've got a bit to say about some of the characters and their representation.
Well, let's talk about Clarice a bit, because Clarice is, she's the protagonist, even though I guess you would say Hannibal Lecter is the star. I think it's a bit hard when you're adapting a novel as well. Because is this movie a sequel to Manhunter or?
It's not a sequel to Manhunter. It is a sequel to Red Dragon, though. Red Dragon is the first book.
And then they made Red Dragon later. Okay. Yeah, definitely the protagonist of the movie. I did notice I was reading some reviews, like contemporary reviews, and they were kind of softer on Clarice than I thought they would be. It was very much like, Jodie Foster does like a good perfunctory job, but she's not the star. Like Anthony Hopkins steals the show, which I think is a bit unfair. I think she's as strong as him.
Yeah, and I think their chemistry is actually sensational.
It's the two of them together that are the best parts of the movie. So yeah, we can look at Clarice, like obviously a very talented and also self-made, like FBI agent. Like Lecter clock. I was about to call him Vader. Lecter clocks immediately that she's from like a sort of poor working class background.
Poor white trash. Yeah.
Are you gonna keep doing that?
I'm gonna do the voice. The voice is really good.
Okay. From West Virginia.
Yeah.
And that she's managed to like do the American dream, elevate herself through this very traditionally masculine route of the FBI. Crawford is like very complimentary of her. And with Crawford, it's interesting, right? This is kind of what I want to touch on because I think we talk about Clarice and Lecter a lot, but Clarice and Crawford is also interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the reviews I was reading refer to him as her mentor, which I thought was a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, he's just kind of a bit of a creepy slime ball, to be honest. He's kind of like a watered down Chilton for mine.
I just sort of was like, she had him for like one class and now he's like using her for this one job. It didn't seem like they really had this kind of established mentor-mentee relationship. Like I'm pretty sure in The Office is the first time they kind of meet like personally.
Yeah.
And then the way that he's using her is a bit sketchy.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to fully call it out because like whatever, you're investigating, in this fictional world where I support the FBI to investigating things, I guess.
There's a lot of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. It's not like the worst. It's not the worst thing to do to send someone into an interview and you don't tell them exactly what you're trying to get out of the subject. Like, I don't think but it's like a bit dodgy. And she picks up on it. She's smart enough to pick up on it quickly.
Yeah.
But it does kind of reveal a bit about like Crawford's own worldview.
Yeah.
But also one that I think he probably correctly assumes. I think he's right to assume that it would work on Lecter, and it does. But like, just for example, I've just got this one line. This was from a Variety review in 1991. Cast against type as a reserved man in glasses and a suit, Scott Glenn is very agreeable surprise as the FBI agent who takes a chance by putting his young charge on the case. Which
poor rating. It all seems very deliberate.
I just think it's a huge mischaracterization of like a misunderstanding of like Crawford's role.
Yeah.
And he's kind of really emblematic of, like the movie has a lot of these shots of like Clarice in the lift with a bunch of really tall men. And then there's the one in the at the funeral home where it's just a bunch of male cops just kind of looking at her.
Before the autopsy scene as well. That was particularly challenging. I thought there's a guy who fucking looks her up and down and there's a dead body on the table.
Yeah. So you've got like all this visual language of like, this is a woman in our very hostile male world trying to like break in and trying to establish herself as their equal and how difficult that is.
Yeah.
And Crawford's kind of emblematic of that as this authority figure. But then again, as part of like Clarice's strength is that she does challenge him on it. She actually straight just calls him out, which is a really nice moment. But I think his reply is pretty patronizing.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I think he kind of comes around to her in the end, like when she does manage to get the information from Lecter and it does help him. Well, he thinks it helps him locate him in Chicago. I think that he does kind of have that moment.
Yeah.
But it's not fully realized. Like there's that shot where with the hands, like, and there's one close up of like Clarice and Lecter with it, and they have the weird lingering like thumb thing, and then it's echoed again with the shot of Crawford and her holding hands and the weird sort of lingering touch.
Yeah,
and to me, that's just like she has this somewhat unhealthy. It kind of reminded me of what you were saying about like the angels and Charlie.
Yep. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Oh, like Daddy
issues.
Yeah. Because Daddy's dead. Daddy got shot.
Daddy's dead.
Yeah.
He was a cop. So now she wants to like be her dad, become a cop, but she also needs another dad, Crawford. Or
yeah. So the silencing of the lambs is not the lambs.
But there's a weird like I guess I'm just trying to say there's a weird like paternalistic element to their relationship, and then there's also this weird sexual undercurrent to the relationship.
Yeah. People will think we're lovers.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that as like a criticism of the movie. I think the movie's trying to like...
Yeah, that's fine. You can definitely be in that realm.
I think it's trying to show that. And I don't think it's like portraying that positively. I'm just kind of surprised at how it's been interpreted in some of like the reviews that I've read. Also, I think it's just interesting, like, because I haven't read the book, but I have seen the show. And I'm pretty sure in the book there was like a little subplot about Crawford's wife dying of cancer. And
she's quite unwell in the book, I think. And he's sort of just like this disheveled old, like former, like muscle-bound detective who's just sort of like running on fumes pretty much.
Okay. Because I think that that's a really interesting choice. Like what you excise in an adaptation can tell you a lot about what you're trying to do. Because I think if you had kept in the subplot, that makes him a lot more sympathetic. It makes him seem like less of a sleaze because he's got a sick wife. Like, you can really soften that. But to remove that and to just have the focus just be weird relationship with Clarice, this kind of highlights the power dynamics of that relationship.
Yeah. I want to get your take on this, but I feel like throughout this entire movie, there is no point where Hannibal Lecter is not in control. Like, he's just like, he's shifting everything in every direction. Like, he is so essential to this movie. Like, they're fucking nowhere without his information. You know what I mean? They're just finding bodies and they're just like desperately moving him around to places to try and get things out of him. And he's cryptically trying to putting things out. And he only really collaborates because he likes Clarice pretty much. Like, for whatever reason, he decides that, oh, I'm connecting with this woman for some reason. And he's kind of the only person who doesn't completely treat her like shit. Like, he does when he first meets her to try and intimidate her, like, verbally. But it's all pretty, like, it's kind of joust about, you know what I mean? Like, he's just trying to get under her skin to fuck with her. But ultimately, like, he probably treats her with the most respect, which is quite uncomfortable when you think about it. Like, she's about to join the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world, and every single person in there will potentially be her employees for, you know, an entire career, as viewing her as a sex object.
I don't know if I totally agree. I think he does kind of view to respect her more. I sort of, I don't know. I think that his humiliation of her continues a lot throughout the relationship. I don't know that I don't know.
I reckon he really comes around to her, especially when, like, with the whole, because she sets up the whole, like, Plum Island thing. It's like, this is my idea. I'm going to fuck with you. Like, I'm going to, like, plant this in you and, like, manipulate you, like, give you a taste of your own medicine. And I think that really amplifies the relationship. He's like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, you're not fucking around. Like, you're a very clever, manipulative person as well, and I respect that.
Yeah, but I still find that their, like, interaction in the like, right before he escapes, there's still a lot. Like, I think he manages to reassert his power in the relationship.
But that's what I mean by he's always got the power of the film. That's what I mean. But I think their relationship is pretty uneven keel, to be perfectly honest.
I don't know. I'm also, like, burdened with the knowledge that in the sequel, like, they end up a couple.
Does that happen?
Yeah.
In the book or the movie?
In the book.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Jonathan Demme and Ted Talley didn't come back for the sequel.
Okay.
They were just like, this is fucked, man. And apparently
Jodie Foster didn't come back either.
Yeah, they weren't into it. The sequel to this was written after the movie was released. Okay. So, yeah, it's kind of, it had entered into the zeitgeist. Yeah, and I sort of get the feeling that Thomas Harris was like, oh, I'm going to give the people what they really want. It's very much like, we're giving you Attack of the Clones. All the Jedis are running at each other. This is not going to be, this ain't your grandpappy's fucking Hannibal Lecter movie.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, you could view the ending of this movie as open-ended in terms of, like, their relationship. I think you could view it as, like, it doesn't seem like she's able to move on, but, like, is she going to pursue him in order to incarcerate him or because she has this fascination with him? Like, it's an intertwining thing. Yeah. Well, so it's actually, to me, it's not a huge leap that they get together. I just think it's the wrong choice. Like, to my sensibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's wrong. But anyway, we've given everyone a little bit of, like, detail analyzing chat. Let's talk about good moments in this movie. Let's pick a favorite moment each.
I think the best moment is night vision in the basement. Like, that shit.
The tension is sensational.
Yeah, like, that is just the scariest. It's so well done. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know if I would call my favorite moment though. My favorite moment,
the escape sequence in the lift, like, because it's such a gotcha moment. Yeah. Like, no one can pick that coming. But all the little, like, there's little seeds planted along the way. Actually, my favorite moment is when you meet him for the first time. But that entire sequence when, like, Jodie Foster and Chilton are, like, walking down the steps and she's sort of briefing him, like, they're descending into the bowels of hell where they keep all, like, the worst evil serial killers in this fucking castle prison. And when they get to that last gate and there's that red light and he shows her the picture, it's like of him biting off and he complained of chest pains and they had to get medical people in there and he bit a nurse's face off. And then Chilton's like, his pulse never got over 45 or something.
Yeah.
And you don't see the picture, but they stand under this red light as this gate is opening. And it's such a turning point where it's just like, we are not here to fuck around. This man is terrifying. And then when you finally meet him at the end of this hall of monsters, he's just this upright, like fucking bean.
Yeah.
It's chilling. Also, we get to meet Barney, and Barney's a cool guy.
Yeah, Barney seemed cool. He was on the wire.
Yeah, Barney.
Yeah, I think I did remember when I was watching because I'd only seen it like once before, and it was like 10 years ago. And when I was watching the escape scene, and they had that moment of when I realized what was happening, and it all like comes together, and you're like, shit, he's in the ambulance,
Yeah.
like. It's so
Face off.
And you kind of know a little bit ahead of everybody else, so you get to really build it. But like I think it does really well with it. It's see, like people don't really do twists well anymore.
Mm-hmm.
This is when they used to do twists well. Like that's a good twist, but like you still know slightly ahead of the characters. Like but the movie is showing you, it's letting you in of like he's not where they think he is. He's there, and then you kind of have that moment of horror, and then it all happens. Like. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and just seeing like when the blood drips through the lift, and then when they walk out and they look at the lift moving, and the guy, incredible mustaches in this film, just more on the topic. But like that one cop is like, what the fuck is this? Great stuff.
Oh yeah, that's great. I loved all the supporting cast is really good. Like the main supporting cast is good, but also like this little bit characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's probably that. It's probably
no one gets a close up in a Jonathan Demme film like all these fucking extras. Like, yeah,
but it's good. It's like it's really nice, kind of humanizing as well, because you get the elaborate escape, but then from the perspective of not bystanders, but like victims, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, and Senator, love the soup.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Jonathan Demme. What do you know about him? Have you seen many of his movies?
I don't think I've seen any of
Is this
his
the only
movies. I think so, yeah.
I haven't seen any Demme.
No Demme. I'm going to fact check myself on that, but yeah.
So most known for this, Philadelphia, The Manchurian Candidate, Stop Making Sense, the live Talking Heads show. And he made the music video for Once in a Lifetime, among other, like, he made a bunch of other music videos for Talking Heads. But yeah, big music video maker and a documentary filmmaker as well.
Oh, no, you know what? I've seen Ricky and the Flash.
Wow. What's that about? Ricky and the Flash?
It's Meryl Streep, and she's a bad mother, and she's in a band, and she moves. She's like the bad dad in a band, except she's the mother, and she moves back to like try and reconnect with her family.
Cool. Is she Ricky or the Flash?
She's Ricky.
Cool.
The Flash is Rick Springfield.
What? Is that for real?
He's in the band.
Dude, he should be Rick. Fuck this movie.
He's in her band.
So we usually like to dissect the makers of these movies and find out what their fucking moral code is. And thank God that the Rolling Stone magazine exists, because there's a great little fucking paragraph that identifies Jonathan Demme's moral code.
He just tells us.
He tells us what it is, and I'm going to read it out right now. This is an article from 1993 from Rolling Stone. And it's when Philadelphia came out, so the film preceding the one that we're talking about. So Philadelphia was fueled by three of the director's staunchest convictions. One, that helping out people who are having a hard time is less a duty than it is a pleasure. That bigotry is more a result of ignorance than evil. Despite the country's political outrages, goodness is deep in the American grain. So, and we talked about this just before going on air. It's a perfect encapsulation of someone whose heart is in the right place but reeks of privilege.
Yes. Because even to be honest, when I was reading that, when you sent it to me, I was sort of like, I like, what...
You get a fucking good read on him pretty quickly once you hear that. Yeah, you do.
But also, I mean, to me, there's a bit of his own ignorance in there of like understanding bigotry. Like, yes, there is, bigotry can be the result of ignorance, but it's also heavily the result of, power and like to pick a fucking or like Andrew Tate is not a bigot and a misogynist because he's ignorant. It's because he wants to have power over women. Like there's I think that can be a little bit of a naive perspective of like, we just need to convince people. And it's like, you can convince some people, but there are some people who are just bigots because they feel disgust and power over other people. And you can't you can't debate people out of that mindset.
Yeah.
And also I think it can kind of put you in a bit of a defensive position. Like, we will talk about this. Like, there's been a lot of critiques of this film from feminists and from sort of queer activists about some of the representation. And I think it can put you a bit on the defensive to be like, what do you mean? Like, I'm an ally. I'm on your side.
Yeah.
As opposed to taking the criticism on board and trying to learn from it. Which I think it seems like he did eventually. But
slow burner, perhaps.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to be hit over the head with a blunt instrument. But I think there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. There is a quote from him from a similar time. Yeah, from the Philadelphia Press Junket. This was from the New York Times, same era. This is what Jonathan Demme had to say. I got a lot of unfounded abuse for the Buffalo Bill character. He wasn't gay. He was a tormented man who hated himself and wished that he was a woman because that would have made him as far away as possible from himself as he could be. Demme also added that he came to realize that there is a tremendous absence of positive gay characters in movies. So I think that's a pretty tightly put together paragraph that identifies kind of exactly what you're saying. He's like, well, he's getting super defensive about doing something, but then he's also realizing, fuck, I gotta shift here. I'm not necessarily in the right.
Yeah. So hold on. Did this movie come out before or after Philadelphia?
Before.
So this is first and then Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's okay. I just think, to me, that feels a bit fake as well. Like his first line when he says Buffalo Bill's not gay, it's a bit like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Like, how can you look at the movie that you made and the character that you created and the way that you costume them and the fucking dialogue in the movie and say, what are you talking about? That's not a gay character. Like, we understand these things through codes as well as through literal explanation. And the coding is all there. So, there's this sort of, like, defensive, selective ignorance there of, like, no, what are you talking about? He's not gay. Like, and to not know just the wealth of film history that this man must know, that everything he was doing screams gay, pervert, cross-dresser, dangerous. Like, I think it's a bit it's either naive or it's like deliberately false to respond that way. Yeah,
100%. And I think we'll push right into that now. I'm just going to cap this off in terms of the people who made it. It's kind of funny, but like the writers, both like the people who have adapted, the person who adapted this to a screenplay and the person who wrote the novel almost entirely exist within like the Hannibal Lecter universe. It's just so Ted Talley has written other films, but almost directly has only been involved in Hannibal Lecter adaptations written by Thomas Harris.
Hey,
so
if you're good at it,
stick
with it.
Yeah, except for Hannibal, because that movie's fucking crazy.
Or Hannibal Rising.
Yeah.
Actually, all of them except Red Dragon's pretty good.
Red Dragon's, it's got a lot of good moments in it, I think.
Yeah.
Cast is stacked.
Edward Norton.
Yeah, with a wacky blonde eye. It's just movies from that time. So Memento, blonde eye. Red Dragon, blonde eye.
It's not as bad as Guy Pearce in Memento.
Yeah, I like Guy Pearce in Memento.
I like
sexy.
I like him too. I'm just saying it's not like Ed Norton's blonde job is not like that.
If we had the same tattoos that Guy Pearce has in Memento, we wouldn't forget any of these quotes. We'd be ready to go at all times. All right, so I did mention off the top that this movie did launch off a lot of not copycat stuff, but it just inspired a lot more films about sort of criminal investigation into serial killers. I guess it was kind of groundbreaking in terms of its psychological profiling at the time, but perhaps is quite dated. Is there anything that you have to say about this film sort of being a little bit dated now?
It's not exactly that I find it dated. It's just that as I've gotten a bit older, I'm less and less interested and kind of more I find the serial killer fascination a bit more worrisome than I used to, especially now.
You don't just have that sort of morbid curiosity that a teenager would have.
Yeah, and I totally did. Like, I don't want to. I don't
same.
want to pretend like I didn't. Like, I was into horror films at the time. So anytime I would be watching a horror film and I'd read the IMDb afterwards, and it would say based on this serial killer, I'd be there like snooping around, seeing what they actually got up to.
It seems to be a very natural impulse for everybody.
Yeah, totally. And like, but I think that we're in a bit of a true crime boom at the moment, which I'm not going to get into because I don't know enough about it, but I just find a bit like maybe we need to all ease off a little bit on that. I think the character of Hannibal Lecter, initially in the book, but like really solidified in the movie with Anthony Hopkins' performance of him, like created the trope of the serial killer genius. And who is like intelligent and sophisticated and horrifying, but because they're intelligent and sophisticated, they're kind of likable and interesting.
They're glamorized.
Perfect word. And then when that happens, I was about to say we don't see him kill anyone, but we totally do. But in that way, it kind of makes his murders sort of like incidental to him. And I just think that is a bit, I don't even like to say that, you know, things in fiction have to be like real life, but like that is not demonstrably not what serial killers in real life are like. They are generally speaking misogynists with tendencies to violence whose tendencies are exacerbated by difficult upbringings and sometimes mental illness, like
and head trauma
and abuse as well. Like this is also a huge thing. Is a lot of people who commit violent crimes are often the victims of violence in childhood. There's a quote from an article by a review by Andrew Saris in the Washington Post, 1991, which says there is an underlying acceptance of evil in this movie, along with the gruesome central subject that might make this release questionable entertainment for more censorious among us. Now, I'm not a censorious person. I don't.
Define censorious.
Oh, like censoring. Like,
okay,
you
cool.
want to censor material.
You ain't no typical baby.
I'm actually not. Like, as much as I like to critique stuff, I would never be like, this movie shouldn't have been made. It shouldn't be shown. It should be taken off streaming. I don't feel that way. I just think that we all kind of need to have a healthy discussion around what happens in them.
Yep.
So... But yeah, anyway, actually, the quote that I want to focus on was the underlying acceptance of evil in the movie, because they represent like Hannibal Lecter as just like this evil. Again, not really true to life. Like, I don't really believe that, even in terms of serial killers. Like, I just think like they do have motivations. Their motivations tend to be like misogyny or like homophobia and things like that, like shame and disgust. Like, those are their motivations. Yeah. They're not just a sophisticated intellectual who
kills rude people,
who has such a sophisticated like fucking palate that he has to like eat human meat. Like, that's just not like how it goes. So this is all getting very circular. But yeah, I don't really like, and I think it does this thing of like elevating both serial killers and then also the behavioral science unit of the FBI, which I don't fully know about, but I've seen some really interesting kind of breakdowns of why a lot of that was a crock of shit, and like refuse to acknowledge like patriarchy and sexism and even the effects of being in the military and what that can do to people's psychology in creating like violence in society. It's like, it's not those things.
Yep.
It's like being a pervert. I know. And the other kind of thing that I thought was really interesting about that review is there's a moment like in the movie where Hannibal Lecter says, "Our Billy wasn't born a criminal, Clarice. He was made one through years of systemic abuse." And I just find it really interesting because this movie does it a couple of times where it like says a line of dialogue to kind of cover itself, but then everything else in the movie doesn't support that line.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of it just kind of throws it in there of like, oh, he's not a real transsexual, so we can't be accused of like transphobia. But it's like they go to the length in the book and the movie to really go hard on this, like, he's not really a transsexual. Like, that's the phrase that they use.
Go hard. They say it in one line.
No, in the book there's actually like a section where she goes and speaks to like a treating doctor at like Johns Hopkins, and there's a whole like conversation about it. And that to me is them trying to really be like, it's not transfer. And maybe and look, if you're, I don't know, when was this book written, like the 80s? At that time, that probably is like due diligence of like, I'm not trying to demonize this community. but it's kind of missing. It in the end, it doesn't matter because what you remember from this movie is goodbye horses.
Yep.
Would you fuck me? I'd fuck you.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, it's the visual of what we're seeing.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not defending this guy.
No,
I'm just like, I completely agree with you. I'm just saying, like, I doubt he even fucking thought about it. That's what I'm saying. I think that shows.
I think he did think about it. I just think at the end it was like, well, I've done my due diligence. Wash my hands of it.
I reckon you're giving him a lot more credit.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, it's always been like controversial.
Mm-hmm.
It was on release. It was the Oscars were picketed that year for by some gay activists who weren't happy with not just this film but also a couple other films. I think that they mentioned in this article from the LA Times, they mentioned Silence of the Lambs, JFK, and also Basic Instinct, which
wowza, what a year. They don't make them like that anymore.
But I thought it was interesting when I read some of the placards that they had things like "Stop Hollywood Homophobia" and "Make Queer Film," and I think that that's kind of
just wait 2 years, baby. Philadelphia's coming.
But even like I don't even think Philadelphia would be the best example.
Not at all.
I think I think what they're driving at is not only like the issues with this film, it's like more queer voices in cinema, more like diversity in cinema in general, which you know, and I don't really think you get from Jonathan Demme making an AIDS movie, but I haven't seen it, so I will not.
It's all right. It's not as bad as you think it is. I think it's all right. But anyway, we'll leave that for another time.
But yeah, like I said, there's definitely issues in this movie of the representation of definitely not transgender people, but gender non-conforming people. Like, yeah, particularly in the costuming and the cinematography in that scene in particular, the Goodbye Horses scene. Like, it's all about, it's just trying to get a disgust response of like, look at this man being feminine.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It Fight Clubs, right?
Yeah, and then this is fully, and not only is that disgusting, but also he kills women. Like, so you can have that dialogue. Like, there's also that dialogue where Clarice says, you know, transsexuals are very passive, and there's no relationship between transsexualism and I'm saying, sorry, just to the listeners, I'm saying transsexualism because that's the language they use in the film, and that was pretty common language that they use at the time, but. Just for that sort of accuracy.
Your tracks are covered. You're all good.
Like, transsexual is very passive and there's not a relationship between transitioning and violence. That's very nice of them to point that out in the movie and then to immediately go to Lang.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you can't, I just think this is what I mean when I say that I think he's just, like, what do you mean, Jonathan Demme, that you don't understand why you're being criticized? Like, how are you proved by making this movie to me that you are an excellent filmmaker. So how are you saying that you don't understand film language enough to see why these groups are making this connection? Do you think that we're stupid?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That's very well put. I'm just saying that's the teaser right there. Thank you. Good get.
It's a cop-out. Like,
yeah, for sure. It's
a huge cop-out.
Yeah. And that's again another thing that I noticed watching this, you know, like 10 years after having watched it a lot. That scene hits so hard and makes me feel so uncomfortable. It's just like, oh yeah, you're really trying to just get a response out of people. It's also, in a lot of ways, it reads as someone who is clueless, I think. Like, it's just like, this is my idea of what a monstrous sexual being would be. Like, that scares me. It's his abject horror. We've talked about abject horror in
definitely
in Alien.
Yeah,
it's just
definitely.
like, I'm taking this physical form and I'm turning it into a monster because it makes me feel physically repulsed.
Yeah, I think that you know, I don't even need to add to that. That was good. Sorry.
Hell yeah, I got a good one in.
Yeah, like, and obviously not speaking for all members of this, but actually a lot of the references I've heard to this movie in the past few years have been from trans and drag queen performers. Like, you know, a drag queen that I love, Katya, has a line from this movie is like in one of her songs, and like I know a few transgender creators who kind of like identify it in a kind of ironic way,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, a really healthy way to respond to media that can like portray this way. Like,
like take the power back sort of thing.
Yeah, which, and I'm not saying, and if you don't do that, like fucking fair enough. But like,
it's your race. Yep.
That's
absolutely.
also kind of like what I like sort of do with Basic Instinct, where I choose to see Catherine Trammell as a bisexual icon rather than like these sort of anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Basic Instinct is definitely way more tongue-in-cheek than this, but that's completely fine. That's a whole nother story. But thank you for mentioning something that was a touch more lighthearted, because I think we need to push into stuff that's a little bit more lighthearted before we get into the grading criteria and we get sad again. It's time for Sexy Lamp. You know what it is. Sexy Lamp. Thanks, everyone. If you can replace any female character with a sexy lamp in your film and it will make no difference to the plot, themes, or story, you are a hack. Cara, who's your sexy lamp? And also, we don't ever really give the sexy lamp out to women. We change it around. We move it around. We're fast and loose here. So fuck whoever said it could only be women. I don't know. Who's your sexy lamp? Stop me from talking.
A Chris Isaac, SWAT team leader.
Now, Chris Isaac, country musician from
big year for Chris Isaac.
From Firewalk with Me, Twin Peaks.
And yeah. And Wild at Heart, he did Wicked Game for that, didn't he?
Yeah, he's all over the place, man.
Big year for Chris Isaac.
Chris Isaac. I like at least 4 or 5 of Chris Isaac's songs.
I like the one that I've heard. Oh, wait, 2.
Yeah. But he did A Bad Bad Thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good song.
And Wicked Game.
Wicked
Game kills.
Wicked Game slaps.
Wicked Game is great.
Chris Isaac. I saw his name in the title. I was like, oh, Chris Isaac's in this.
When I saw
Where is he? I actually don't know when he's in it.
When I saw him in the titles, I was looking for him. He's in during the escape scene. He's the SWAT guy.
Oh.
He's one of them.
I didn't notice him.
Okay, well, he's got a hat on.
Okay.
But I was fully like, there's Chris Isaac.
Yeah.
And he's
There's
sexy.
Baby doing his bad thing.
There he is.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Playing some wicked games.
All right, well, I was undecided. I wrote down a few. We have Barney the Guard, who we've touched on.
Oh, yeah, he's nice.
We love Barney. Barney's the nicest guy who works in that prison, who just says to Clarice before she goes and meets Hannibal Lecter for the first time, don't worry, you'll do great.
Yeah.
I'm like, Barney. He's also like, you know, when like Hannibal's like getting all harnessed up and Chilton's just making fun of him. He's like, we had you fooled the entire time. Barney's standing next to him going like,
you're an idiot.
Why'd you do that? That's mean.
Like, I don't think he'd eat Barney. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Barney Dunn did him good.
Barney gets a pass.
I had Precious the dog.
No.
No sexy lamp?
No.
Yeah, Precious.
Don't secularize her that way.
Okay, fine. And just to get a reaction out of you, I had Chilton.
Ooh.
The sexless lamp. Pick
I
from one of those 3.
I think Chilton's sort of too like plot important.
Mm-hmm.
I guess from your 3, I'd go Barney.
Okay, cool. Barney, big dog, sexy lamp, but a sexy lamp out of respect.
Yeah, a respectful sexy lamp.
Yeah. All right. Now
as opposed to my Chris Isaac disrespectful sexy lamp.
Well, I don't even know. I've seen this movie like 40 times and I've never ever noticed him in it. He's like he's an undetectable lamp. He's so sexy you can't even see him.
Well, I was looking for him.
Yeah, fair enough. You're looking for your wicked game. Okay. Time for Statham swap out.
Yeah.
If you could swap out any character from this film with Jason Statham, who would it be? Cara, go.
I struggled with this one. I went with like the moth guys.
The bug guys. That's pretty good.
One of the bug guys. The one.
You ever go out for cheeseburgers and beer?
Or
the house wine? He's got a fake little lazy eye.
The one is not a PhD. I don't know. That was a funny line.
Yeah.
Ignore him. He's not a PhD.
He's not a PhD.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the other ones I was
Could he play both? He could do like a split screen twin.
like the Parent Trap.
Yeah.
And because the other ones I was thinking, like, I feel like Crawford was kind of too easy. Like, and, you know, he couldn't be Lecter.
Well, could he? I ate his liver with the side of fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Well,
he was. I had him as Hannibal. I had him as Hannibal. Quid pro quo.
Well,
all right. No, I think Yeah, like I just kind of want to see him saying those lines, but like it goes against what we've kind of been doing previously.
I think it's better when it's a side character because, it would change.
No, well, it worked so well for Charlie.
It would change sort of the type of the movie a bit.
Well, okay, I've got one more potential. What if Jason Statham played Ardelia?
Yeah. But if we did that, then this movie
would covets.
But then the movie wouldn't pass the Bechdel test.
No, it would because she talks to that one girl in a bar or something. But wouldn't that be so funny?
Yeah.
Like Jason Statham's in the crowd at graduation just giving Clarice a thumbs up and like a wink. Or like Jason Statham sprinting through Quantico, like with the facts of the information.
Yeah. I think, okay. Then you run into the problem of, I guess another little cringe moment is the fact that the only two black people in this movie are Barney and Ardelia.
Yeah, all right. So we can't give them both the awards because well, actually, no, it's Jonathan Demme's fault. It's his fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made us do this.
Yeah, that would, okay.
All right, well, okay, so it's Hannibal or the bug guy. You got to pick.
Bug guy.
Okay. Cheeseburgers and beer and house wine. Okay, cool. That's a pretty tidy little Statham swap out. All right, let's push over to our grading criteria. We do this for every film that we review. We judge it by three main criteria. 1, does it Fight Club? 2, does it Bechdel? And 3, does she make it? Starting off with Fight Club. Just to fill everyone in, if you don't know by now, if the film has a reverse effect of what the filmmakers intended. For example, something like Fight Club, a film that identified the perils of mental health issues that made boys want to punch each other in the head. Cara, does this film Fight Club for you?
I think it does, in sort of what we were talking about in regards to sort of representation of queerness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it does for sort of like the more feminist aspects because actually maybe it does. I'm going to say it does. There's potential there.
Yeah, I guess it does.
I just think through like kind of, as we've discussed, Jonathan Demme's and also Thomas Harris's like blind spots, there's all this room for like bad faith takes for this film.
Yeah.
So
it depends if it was his intention or not. You know what I mean? Like with the gross out sort of thing that we're talking about.
I don't think it matters what his intention was.
Okay, well that put an end to that conversation. Okay, fuck it. You fucked it, Demi, at Fight Clubs. Yeah.
Yeah, 0 points, Demi.
Yeah. It's off to a poor start.
Give me
Jonathan.
your Oscar. Oh, sorry, he died. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, we lost him. We lost our boy, Johnny D. The Bechdel test, as defined by the Feminist Film Guide. 1, the film has to have at least 2 named women in it who talk to each other about something besides a man. As we have discussed, this film does pass the Bechdel test, but barely. Cara, go on.
By the skin of its teeth. I really thought it was going to fail. Like I was looking for it, and I really
looking for it like a moth inside the mouth of a corpse that's washed up on a river.
Not quite that hard was I looking for it, but I was. Because she kept on having these little chats with Ardelia, and I really was like, they're not going to name her, and then it won't count. And then I'm like, oh, she's named. She has a name.
Yeah.
It passes. But then, she also speaks to Buffalo Bill's sort of last victim who survives. She's named Catherine, and they have a brief sort of, I guess you could call it a conversation during the rescue. And he also speaks to a victim's friend in the diner about, just questions her. So it does pass, but it's all pretty incidental. Like,
yeah.
To which the point being that there aren't many very substantial female characters in this film except for Clarice Starling.
Yeah. Yeah. So it passes, but at what cost?
But what does it matter?
Yeah. Does she make it?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, dog.
She becomes a cop.
Yeah. So she doesn't make it at all. She makes it. Catherine gets out. Yeah, the girls. Yeah, they make it. That's a cut and dry one. So 4 out of 6. But the big kicker, as I ask you every week, Cara, is this film helpful or harmful?
I'm gonna. have to fall on the side of harmful.
Wow.
Unfortunately, like with everything that we've talked about, because I just think it's all there. And the film is so good that it's so successful at communicating these ideas that it doesn't fully understand and doesn't treat with the correct respect. I'm talking about the queer representation and also about the serial killer stuff. So, you know, we have this glamorization of serial killers. You have this glamorization of violent cisgender men and this demonization of a gender non-conforming person. And it does it so well that you as a viewer just go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to unfortunately fall down on the side of harmful.
Fair enough. I do agree with all of those points. I have one thing that I think is quite positive that I'll bring to the table in terms of this being more helpful, is that I don't think I've seen a movie in my life that puts the viewer in the shoes of a woman who is constantly bombarded with advancements from other guys, and you as a viewer, you feel it, feel the weight of it on yourself as well as you feel it on Clarice. And I think I felt that every single time that I've watched this, even as a teenager. It's like a lot of that has to do with the POV shots where you're constantly having to look into the eyes of these slime balls, particularly someone like Chilton. I think you really feel it in those situations, to the point where you are so happy at the end when you find out that Hannibal Lecter's going to kill him. And I think that in itself is a success. And I don't think you would find any guy who's watched this film who wouldn't feel the same way about him killing Chilton at the end of it. Like, and again, it glamorizes serial killers. But if you talk about people having pathways to get over misogyny and seeing it in mainstream media, I think you've got to cling on to the wins that you get.
Yeah, I think there's also this element of it makes it difficult to kind of, I think a movie like this, which is about a person who kills women, should be about misogyny, and you should be about, unfortunately, because it has all these other implications, I then have to spend this whole chat talking about like how it's a bad representation in these ways. And you don't then get to like kind of discuss like, you know, the like real causes. And like, I actually think this movie is really good about putting you in the position of the, like, helping you identify with the victim as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of movies don't spend as much time with, and we don't spend a huge amount of time with Catherine, but you get a bit of her in the car. She likes Tom Petty.
She rocks, man.
She's got a cat. She's like, you see her sort of wanting to help Bill out. That's how he lures his victims in. Like, and we kind of spend a little bit of time with her while she's in captivity. And I think that's all like really good, actually. Like, it's good to like build empathy, you know, for victims, because a lot of serial killer movies don't really bother with that. They're just quite disposable. So I think that that's like a really good thing to remind you that, oh, these people like they kill women, like,
yeah,
and that's like terrible. Like,
you can't be doing that.
Yeah,
you can't be doing that.
But then everything just gets so murky with all the other stuff that you can't even really talk about like what the core of it should be.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And if it was made today, who knows?
Well, there's always the Clarice series starring Rebecca Breeds, who played Cassie in Blue Water High.
Mate, I'm sold. Is that what streaming service is that on?
I think it's
brought to you by Hulu. This episode of A Bechdel Dysfunction is brought to you by Hulu.
Let me look this up.
Oh, this is fucked. Why are we looking at this?
CBS 2021.
Oh, it's free to air.
Only lasted one season.
Yeah, it's probably fucking shit. Like all the other sequels to this. Yeah, but I think you're bang on. That just about does it for another episode of A Bechdel Dysfunction, a podcast that dissects feminist films directed by men and discusses whether they are helpful or harmful. Thanks so much for joining us this time. Tune in next time for another installment.